The silence in the Great Hall of Justice was so complete that Senna could hear her own heartbeat thundering against her ribs as she knelt in chains, abandoned by every soul who had once claimed to care for her. Not a single voice rose in her defense as the council pronounced her guilty of murder until the massive doors exploded open and the Alpha King himself strode in. One of the strode, as a council be cover, the parting that was make sure and howl, the council be cated with herd, the council brooded herd. His golden eyes blazing with a fury that made even the most powerful wolves cower. "Stop this farce," he commanded, his voice shaking the very foundations of the building, "or I will show you what real justice looks like." But 3 days earlier, Senna Valewood had been just another invisible Omega in the Crimson Valley Pack, scrubbing floors in the pack house and trying to avoid the attention of those who considered her existence an insult to their bloodline. The autumn rain hammered against the windows as she worked, her knees aching against the cold stone. When the pack's communication bells began tolling in a pattern she'd never heard before, 13 strikes, the death knell reserved for alphas. "Get up, murderer." The voice belonged to Vera Ashmark, daughter of the pack's Beta and Senna's chief tormentor since childhood. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into Senna's shoulder as she hauled her to her feet. "Elder Thaddeus is dead, and his blood is on your hands. On is Senna's." Senna's mind reeled. Elder Thaddeus, the pack's most respected council member, had been alive just hours ago when she'd brought him his evening meal. "That's impossible. I would never." "Save your lies for the trial." Beta Ashmark himself appeared in the doorway, his scarred face twisted with disgust. "We found your scarf in his chamber, soaked in wolfsbane poison, the same poison that stopped his heart." The world tilted on its axis. Senna's mother had given her that scarf before disappearing 10 years ago. It was her most precious possession. "Someone must have taken it. I haven't seen it in days." "Enough." Alpha Dimitri Ravencrest entered the hall, and every wolf present submitted instantly, necks bared in respect. Everyone, except Senna, who was too shocked to move. The Alpha's ice-blue eyes fixed on her with deadly intent. "An Omega killing an Elder is the highest form of treason. You'll face the Council of 5 Territories at dawn." The Council of 5 Territories. Senna's blood turned to ice. Unlike pack justice, which might show mercy, the Council's trials were absolute. No Omega had ever walked free from their judgment. "Please, Alpha Ravencrest." Senna found her voice, though it trembled. "Let me explain. I served Elder Thaddeus faithfully for 3 years. Why would I?" "Because he discovered what you really are." Vera's smile was sharp as broken glass. "A contamination in our bloodline. He was going to propose your banishment at tomorrow's pack meeting, wasn't he? You killed him to save your pathetic position." It was true that Elder Thaddeus had been investigating pack genealogies, but he'd always been kind to Senna, often defending her when others suggested she be cast out. The accusation made no sense, but she could see in their faces that logic had no place here. They needed someone to blame, and the weakest wolf made the easiest target. Dawn came too quickly, bringing with it the Iron Guard, the Council's enforcers who answered to no pack alpha. They bound Senna in silver-laced chains that burned her skin and loaded her into a prison wagon like livestock. Through the bars, she watched her packmates gather to witness her removal, not one face showing sympathy or doubt about her guilt. The journey to the neutral territories took 2 days through dense forest and treacherous mountain passes. The Council of 5 Territories convened in the ancient Stoneheart Fortress, a massive structure built into the mountainside where pack laws had been decided for centuries. As they approached, Senna saw wolves from all 5 territories streaming toward the fortress word of an Omega, Murdering an elder had spread like wildfire. Quite the crowd for your execution, growled her guard, a scarred wolf named Hendrik. Haven't seen this many bloodthirsty wolves since the last territory war. The trial chamber was a circular amphitheater carved from black stone, with 5 elevated thrones for each territory's representative. Senna was forced to her knees in the center, the silver chains weighing her down as hundreds of wolves filled the viewing galleries. She searched desperately for a friendly face, anyone who might speak for her, but found only strangers eager for entertainment. Senna Valewood, Omega of Crimson Valley Pack. The center judge's voice boomed across the chamber. He was Aldrich Stormclaw, ancient and powerful, his white beard reaching his chest. Points. You stand accused of murdering Elder Thaddeus Ironwood through wolfsbane poisoning. How do you plead? Not guilty. Senna's voice cracked but carried. I've been framed. Someone stole my scarf and... Silence. Judge Aldrich's eyes flashed amber. You will speak only when questioned. Beta Ashmark, present your evidence. What followed was a masterfully orchestrated destruction. Beta Ashmark presented the poisoned scarf, witness testimony placing Senna near the elder's chambers, and financial records showing the elder had been investigating her mother's disappearance, implying motive. Each piece of evidence had been twisted to paint her as a calculating killer. The accused worked in the pack kitchens, Vera testified, playing the traumatized pack member perfectly. She had access to wolfsbane stores. She knew Elder Thaddeus took a specific tea every evening for his arthritis. She alone served him that night. That's because it was my assigned duty, Senna protested, earning a sharp crack across her shoulders from a guard's staff. The silver chains prevented her healing, and she tasted blood. The accused will remain silent, Judge Aldrich commanded coldly. 4 hours, witness after witness spoke against her. Pack members she'd served faithfully for years now claimed to have seen suspicious behavior. The kitchen staff testified about missing wolfsbane, though Senna had never handled the herb. Even wolves from neighboring packs emerged with stories of her unstable heritage and omega volatility. Not a single voice rose in her defense. As the sun reached its zenith, filtering through the fortress's crystal skylights, Judge Aldrich called for any who would speak for the accused. The silence was deafening. Senna's heart shattered as she realized the truth: she was utterly alone. In a world where pack meant everything, she had no one. Then we shall proceed to judgment, Aldrich announced, raising his ceremonial gavel. The other 4 judges nodded in solemn agreement, already convinced of her guilt. The massive doors of the trial chamber suddenly burst open with such force that they cracked against the stone walls. Every wolf in attendance turned in shock as a figure strode through, tall, powerful, and radiating an authority that made even the territorial judges shift uncomfortably in their seats. The Alpha King had arrived. Senna had never seen him in person, only heard whispers of Cassius Nightborn, the young king who'd united the fractured territories after the War of Shadows. He was larger than any wolf she'd ever encountered, his presence filling the chamber like a storm contained in flesh. His hair was black as midnight, his eyes a striking gold that seemed to see through everything they touched. Most unsettling was how those eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel exposed despite the chains. Your Majesty, Judge Aldrich rose hastily, bowing deep. We weren't expecting, clearly. The king's voice was deep velvet over steel. I was passing through the territories when I heard about this trial. An Omega accused of murdering an elder, quite the serious charge. I trust the evidence is irrefutable? Something in his tone made the judges exchange uncertain glances. Of course, Your Majesty, Beta Ashmart. Beta Ashmark has presented compelling. Has the accused been allowed to present her own evidence? Call her own witnesses? The king moved closer, and Senna noticed he walked with the controlled grace of a predator. Or have we already decided her guilt based on her status? Omegas rarely have witnesses willing to. That wasn't my question. The king's eyes flashed dangerously. Has she been given the opportunity required by territorial law? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Senna's mind raced. Why would the Alpha King care about proper procedure for an unknown Omega? She studied him through lowered lashes, noting how he positioned himself between her and the judges, almost protective. Well? The king's patience was clearly wearing thin. She declined to present a defense. Beta Ashmark interjected smoothly. Guilt often silences. I didn't decline. Senna found her voice, despite the risk. I wasn't asked. I tried to explain, but was told to remain silent. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The Alpha King turned his full attention to her, and Senna felt the weight of his scrutiny like a physical touch. What's your name, Omega? Senna Valewood, Your Majesty. And you maintain your innocence? Yes. She met his gaze directly, knowing it was forbidden but unable to look away. Elder Thaddeus was investigating something important. I believe he was killed to silence him, and I'm being framed because I'm expendable. Lies, Vera hissed from the witness gallery. She speaks blasphemy before the king himself. Did I ask for your opinion? The king's voice cracked like a whip, and Vera shrank back. He returned his attention to Senna. What was the elder investigating? Pack bloodlines, Your Majesty. He'd been researching genealogies for months, particularly. She hesitated, knowing how it would sound, particularly around the time several Omegas disappeared from various packs. The judges shifted uneasily. The king's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Interesting. And you served him during this research? Yes. He often had me fetch old records from the archives. He said. Senna's voice caught as she remembered the elder's kindness. He said I had a gift for finding things others overlooked. Then perhaps, the Alpha King said slowly, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, we should allow her to demonstrate this gift. I invoke royal privilege. Gasps echoed through the amphitheater. Royal privilege hadn't been used in decades. It allowed the king to take personal custody of any accused wolf pending further investigation. Judge Aldrich's face went pale. Your Majesty, surely you don't mean to question my judgment, Aldrich? The king's tone was deceptively mild, but power rippled through the air, making every wolf present bare their neck in instinctive submission. I find myself curious about these missing Omegas and murdered elders. The accused will accompany me for questioning. The evidence against her is overwhelming, Beta Ashmark protested, though his voice shook. The council has a duty to serve justice. Justice? The king laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you call this theatrical farce? An Omega in chains, no defense presented. Witnesses who speak from carefully rehearsed scripts. He moved closer to Ashmark, who stumbled backward. Tell me, Beta, when did you last see justice served to an Omega in any territorial court? The silence was damning. As I thought. The king turned to his guards, who had appeared as if from nowhere, elite wolves in midnight blue armor bearing the royal crest. Release her, point. Your Majesty? Judge Aldrich tried once more. The law requires fair trial, which you failed to provide. The king's patience had clearly ended. Unless you'd like me to launch a formal investigation into the council's handling of Omega cases over the past decade, I'm certain the results would be illuminating. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Everyone knew the council had been less than equitable in their treatment of lower-ranked wolves, but no one had dared challenge them before. The judges exchanged worried glances before Aldrich nodded reluctantly. "The accused is released to royal custody pending further investigation," he announced, his voice bitter. "This trial is suspended. The accused..." As the guards removed her chains, Senna's legs nearly buckled. The silver had left angry welts on her wrists and ankles, and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. She forced herself to remain upright, aware that hundreds of eyes watched her every move. "Can you walk?" The king's voice was quieter now, meant only for her. "Yes, your majesty." It might have been a lie, but she'd crawl if necessary, rather than show weakness before these wolves who'd condemned her. "Good. Stay close to me." He turned to address the crowd one final time. "Let word spread through all territories the crown is watching. Justice will no longer be determined by rank or power, but by truth. Any who disagree are welcome to challenge me directly." No one moved. The walk from the trial chamber felt endless. Senna stayed within arm's reach of the king as instructed, hyper-aware of the hostile stares and whispered curses following their progress. She'd gone from condemned killer to the king's. What? Prisoner? Project? She didn't know. And that terrified her almost as much as the trial had. They emerged into afternoon sunlight that seemed too bright after the chamber's darkness. A royal convoy waited sleek black vehicles that looked both elegant and militaristic. The king paused at the lead vehicle, turning to study her with those unsettling gold eyes. "You're wondering why I intervened," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, your majesty." There seemed no point in denying it. "3 reasons. First, I despise mockeries of justice. Second, your elder Thaddeus sent me several concerning letters before his death. Letters about missing omegas that warranted investigation." He paused, something unreadable crossing his features. "And third, you smell like rain." Before Senna could process that bizarre statement, he was climbing into the vehicle. A guard gestured for her to follow. The royal compound was nothing like Senna had imagined. Instead of ostentatious displays of wealth, everything was functional, almost military in its precision. The Alpha King's personal wing occupied the eastern section, overlooking vast training grounds where elite guards sparred in coordinated formations. Senna was given a room that exceeded anything she'd known, simple but clean, with her own bathroom and a bed that didn't smell of other wolves. A healer tended her silver burns with gentle efficiency, and fresh clothes appeared as if by magic. The contrast to her cell should have been comforting, but uncertainty made her pace like a caged animal. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "The king requires your presence," a guard announced. She was led to what appeared to be a war room. Maps covered every wall, marked with red pins that formed ominous patterns. The Alpha King stood at a central table, studying documents with intense focus. He'd changed from formal court attire to simple black clothing that emphasized his warrior's build. "Tell me about Elder Thaddeus's research," he commanded without preamble. Senna gathered her thoughts. "He started 6 months ago, after an omega named Iris went missing from our pack. She was the third to vanish without explanation. The Alphas claimed they ran away, but Elder Thaddeus didn't believe it. Why not? Because Iris was happy. She'd just been promoted to head gardener, had a mate who adored her. She left everything behind, even her mother's jewelry, which she never removed." Senna moved closer to the table, recognizing some of the marked locations. The elder found similar disappearances in other packs. Always omegas, always ones who were different. Different how? Stronger than typical omegas, faster healing. Some showed unusual abilities. Iris could make plants grow with just a touch. The elder thought. She hesitated. "Continue." He thought someone was collecting them. He found references in old texts about Omega bloodlines that carried traces of the first wolves. He believed someone was hunting those bloodlines. The king's expression darkened. Show me what you remember of his research. For the next hour, Senna reconstructed everything she could recall: dates, locations, genealogies the elder had traced. The king listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions that revealed a mind as strategic as any general's. As she worked, she became aware of his presence in a way that disturbed her: his scent of pine and storm, the controlled power in every movement. There, she pointed to a pattern she'd just noticed. Every disappearance happened within 3 days of a new moon, when wolf senses are weakest. And look, she traced a route between the marked locations. They form a path leading north, toward the broken territories. Where the old laboratories were, the king murmured. During the territory wars. Senna's blood chilled. Everyone knew the stories of experiments performed on captured wolves during the wars, attempts to create super soldiers that had instead created abominations. You think someone's continuing those experiments? Quote, I think Elder Thaddeus discovered something that got him killed. The king's eyes met hers, proud. And I think you were framed not just because you were convenient, but because you're one of them, one of the Omegas they're hunting. The room seemed to tilt. That's impossible. I'm nothing special. You survived silver chains that should have permanently damaged an ordinary Omega. Your healing rate is 3 times normal. And your scent. He moved closer, and Senna's heart raced. Rain and moonlight, with something underneath that's almost familiar. When did your mother disappear? 10 years ago. The words came out whispered. The night of the blood moon. She left my scarf and a note saying she'd return, but, Your Majesty. A guard burst through the door, face flushed with urgency. We have a situation. Representatives from Crimson Valley Pack demand the return of their Omega. They claim new evidence has surfaced that proves her guilt conclusively. The king's expression hardened. Show them in. Senna's stomach dropped as Beta Ashmark entered, flanked by pack enforcers. But it was the figure behind them that made her heart stutter. Her closest friend from the pack. Mira, who she'd grown up with, shared dreams with, trusted completely. Mira? Senna stepped forward, hope blooming. You came to help. I came to tell the truth. Mira's voice was cold, her brown eyes avoiding Senna's gaze. I can't protect you anymore, Senna. Not after what I found. What are you talking about? Mira pulled out a leather journal. Its pages yellowed with age. This was hidden in your room. Your mother's journal, detailing her experiments with wolfsbane cultivation. She was obsessed with creating new strains, stronger poisons. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I've never seen that before. Senna felt the world crumbling. Mira, you know me. We've been friends since we were pups. You know I would never. I thought I knew you. Mira finally met her eyes, and the betrayal there cut deeper than any blade. But then I remembered all those times you disappeared at night, your strange interest in herbs. The way Elder Thaddeus always favored you. Were you learning from him or planning his death? How could you think that? Tears burned Senna's eyes. This was worse than the trial, worse than the chains. This was her heart being ripped out by someone she'd trusted with everything. Because she was well compensated for her testimony. The Alpha King interjected, his voice deadly quiet. Weren't you, Omega Mira? A promotion to Beta's assistant, a new house for your family, guaranteed protection for your younger siblings. Quite the price for betraying a friend. Mira flinched but lifted her chin. I'm protecting my family. The pack made it clear, testify or watch them suffer. What would you have done? Senna whispered. I would have fought for you. fighting gets Omegas killed. Mira's voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry, Senna, but I choose survival. Beta. Ashmark stepped forward, triumph gleaming in his eyes. This evidence is irrefutable, Your Majesty. The journal contains detailed notes about Elder Thaddeus's tea preferences, his allergies, his vulnerabilities, combined with witness testimony from someone who knew the accused intimately. Someone you coerced, the king growled. Someone who chose wisely. Ashmark's smile was sharp. Return the Omega to us, and this matter can be resolved quietly. Refuse, and every pack in the territories will know the Alpha King harbors convicted murderers. The tension in the room crackled like lightning. Senna saw the king's guards shift subtly, hands moving to weapons. But it was the king himself who commanded attention. Power rolled off him in waves that made everyone step back. You dare threaten me? His voice was soft, which somehow made it more terrifying. I merely point out political realities, Ashmark replied, though sweat beaded his forehead. Even kings must consider public opinion. Public opinion? The king laughed, dark and dangerous. Very well, let's discuss what the public should know. Shall I start with the secret shipments of wolfsbane your pack has been selling to the highest bidder? Or perhaps the 3 Omegas who died in your custody last year, all ruled accidents? I have documentation, Beta Ashmark. Detailed records that would make fascinating public reading. Ashmark's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? The king pulled out a datapad, scrolling through files. Invoice dated 6 months ago, 50 pounds of concentrated wolfsbane to an unknown buyer in the Broken Territories. Signed by you personally. Should I continue? The beta's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Behind him, Mira had gone pale, clearly realizing she'd been a pawn in something larger. You see, the Alpha King continued, his voice carrying the weight of authority. I've been investigating the missing Omegas for months. Your elder Thaddeus wasn't the only one who noticed the pattern. He was simply the first brave enough to dig deeper. The king moved to the wall of maps, pointing to the red markers. 27 Omegas vanished in the last year alone, all with unusual abilities. All from packs that coincidentally received large payments shortly after. Someone is buying Omegas, and packs are selling them like cattle. That's a serious accusation, Ashmark stammered. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. The king's eyes blazed gold. And your pack is one of the worst offenders. Elder Thaddeus discovered your involvement, didn't he? He confronted you about Iris and the others. So you killed him and framed the 1 Omega who'd helped him 2 birds with 1 stone. She'd disappear into the execution grounds, and your secrets would die with her. Lies, Ashmark snarled, but fear bled through his bravado. You have no proof. I have his letters. The king pulled out a sealed envelope. Elder Thaddeus sent me everything, names, dates, financial records. He knew he was in danger, so he made copies. He also told me about an Omega he was protecting, one whose bloodline traced back to something extraordinary. One whose mother didn't abandon her, but was taken. Senna's legs nearly gave out. My mother was taken? 10 years ago. A group of wolves with exceptional abilities were discovered and captured. The survivors were scattered, hidden among regular packs to protect their children. Your mother was one of them, Senna. She left you the scarf as a marker, hoping someone would recognize its significance. The pattern woven into it is a royal seal from the time before the territories split. The room spun. Senna gripped the table for support as impossible truths crashed over her. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She'd been protecting her. But that would mean, Mira whispered, horror dawning in her eyes, that Senna carries the bloodline of the lost throne. the king confirmed. The direct descendant of the unified kingdom that existed before the territory wars. It's why she's stronger than a typical Omega, why Elder Thaddeus protected her, and why certain people want her dead. Impossible, Ashmark spat. She's nobody. She's the rightful heir to the Northern Territories. The king's declaration echoed like thunder. Her bloodline supersedes even mine in certain regions. Elder Thaddeus traced her genealogy back 15 generations. The documentation is irrefutable. Cower and in the stain. Senna couldn't breathe. This had to be a dream. A hallucination brought on by the silver poisoning. She was a servant, a floor scrubber, not royalty. Even if that were true, Ashmark rallied, desperation making him reckless. She's still accused of murder. Royal blood doesn't exempt her from justice. No, but innocence does. A new voice spoke from the doorway. Captain Roth of the Royal Investigation Unit entered, carrying a sealed evidence box. We've completed our analysis of the poison that killed Elder Thaddeus. It's a synthetic variant of wolfsbane, manufactured only in one location, a facility owned by your brother, Beta Ashmark. The beta went perfectly still, pain. Furthermore, Captain Roth continued, we found your scent signature on the stolen scarf, along with traces of the synthetic poison. Security footage from the palace archives shows you entering the Elder's chambers an hour before his death. You've been sloppy, Beta. No, 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 no. Greed often makes wolves careless. I want immunity, Ashmark said suddenly. I'll tell you everything who's buying the Omegas, where they're being taken, who else is involved, but I want protection. You want mercy? The Alpha King's voice was arctic. After what you've done? I'm not the mastermind. Ashmark insisted. I'm just a middleman. The real power behind this is someone you'd never suspect, someone close to the throne itself. The interrogation moved to a secure room where Beta Ashmark, now stripped of his rank and dignity, spilled secrets like a broken dam. Senna watched through reinforced glass as the truth emerged in all its ugly glory. Poses. The operation is called the Harvest, Ashmark revealed, voice shaking. They're collecting Omegas with specific bloodline markers, descendants of the first wolves who carry dormant abilities. Patient. The plan is to awaken these abilities through experimentation. Who leads this harvest? Captain Roth demanded. Ashmark's eyes darted nervously. Lord Fenwick Draven, the king's own advisor. He believes Omegas are the key to creating a new breed of wolf-controllable super soldiers who will reshape the territories. Senna saw the Alpha King's jaw clench. Lord Draven had been his father's most trusted ally, instrumental in Cassius's rise to power after the old king's death. The betrayal clearly cut deep. He has a facility in the Broken Territories, Ashmark continued. An old war laboratory they've restored. The missing Omegas are there. Those who survive the initial procedures, anyway. How many survive? The king's voice was deadly quiet. Maybe 1 in 5. The process of awakening dormant genes, violent. Most can't handle the transformation. Ashmark swallowed hard. But those who do become something else, faster, stronger, with abilities we've only seen in legends. Lord Draven calls them his new moon wolves. And my mother? Senna found herself at the door, before realizing she'd moved. Is she alive? Ashmark's gaze flicked to her through the glass. Luna Valewood was one of the first successes. Last I heard, she was being kept in the high-security wing. Considers her too valuable. To eliminate her bloodline is pure. First wolf descended from the original Luna Queen. He's been trying to replicate her genetic structure. The Alpha King turned to Senna, and she saw her own turmoil reflected in his eyes. We need to move fast. Once Draven realizes Ashmark has been compromised, he'll accelerate his plans or disappear entirely. I'm going with you, Senna said immediately. It's too dangerous. My mother is there. Other innocents are there. I'm not sitting safely in the palace while they suffer. Steel entered her voice, surprising them both. You said I carry royal blood? Then let me act like it. The king studied her for a long moment. You have no combat training. One wrong move could get you killed. Then teach me. She stepped closer, meeting his intense gaze without flinching. You have 3 days before the new moon. Ashmark said that's when the next transformation ceremony happens. Train me, arm me, and let me help save my people. Our people, he corrected quietly. If your bloodline is what Thaddeus documented, then you're not just northern royalty. You're connected to my own line through the ancient pacts. We're distant cousins, technically. Then, as family, Senna pressed. Let me fight for our family. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. Captain Roth, clear training room 7. Prepared. If the princess insists on joining this mission, she'll need to be prepared. Princess. The title sat strangely on Senna's shoulders, but she forced herself to stand straighter. She'd been an Omega for so long, accepting scraps and servitude. Now she had a chance to be something more, to save lives instead of simply surviving. There's something else, Ashmark called out, clearly desperate to prove his value. Draven has a spy in your inner circle, Your Majesty. Someone who's been feeding him information about your movements. That's how he's stayed ahead of your investigations. The king went very still. Who? I don't know their identity, only their codename Moonfall, but they're close to you. Close enough to know your private schedule. 3 days of intensive training pushed Senna beyond every limit she thought she had. The Alpha King, Cassius, he'd told her to call him when they were alone, proved to be a relentless but effective teacher. He showed her how to channel her dormant abilities, to fight with the fluid grace her bloodline should have always possessed. Your mother's strength flows through you, he said during one session, watching as she successfully shattered a training dummy with a single focused strike. You were always meant to be more than they allowed you to become. Now, as they approached the facility hidden in the broken territories, Senna wore tactical gear instead of servant's clothes. The weight of weapons felt strange but right, as if she'd been waiting her whole life to shed her Omega facade. The strike team consisted of the king's most trusted guards, Captain Roth's investigation unit, and a handful of wolves who'd lost family to the harvest. They moved through the twisted landscape of the broken territories, land still scarred from the ancient wars, like shadows given form. Security cameras show minimal guards, Roth reported through their earpieces. Draven must be confident in his secrecy. Or it's a trap, Cassius murmured. He glanced at Senna, who crouched beside him overlooking the facility. Last chance to stay with the perimeter team. Not happening, she replied firmly. Her wolf stirred restlessly beneath her skin, sensing her mother's presence somewhere in that concrete monstrosity. I can feel them, the Omegas. They're terrified. It was another ability that had emerged during training, this connection to other wolves of her bloodline. Cassius theorized it was part of what made the original Luna Queens so powerful they could sense their people's needs across vast distances. Then we move now. Cassius signaled the teams. Remember, priority is evacuating the captives. Draven is mine. They struck hard and fast. The facility's defenses, designed to keep prisoners in rather than attackers out, crumbled under the coordinated assault. Senna found herself fighting alongside hardened warriors, as if she'd done it all her life, her newly awakened abilities making her deadly efficient. The deeper they penetrated into the facility, the more horrors they uncovered. Cells filled with omegas in various stages of transformation, some successful, radiating dangerous power, others twisted by failed experiments. The scent of pain and fear nearly overwhelmed Senna's enhanced senses. "Mother," she breathed, catching a familiar scent beneath the layers of anguish. She broke from the group, following that trace through sterile corridors until she reached a heavy door marked with warning symbols. Inside, surrounded by monitoring equipment, lay Luna Valewood. Her mother was alive but changed. Her hair, once dark like Senna's, now held streaks of pure silver. Power radiated from her unconscious form in waves that made the air shimmer. Whatever Draven had done to her, she'd become something beyond an ordinary wolf. Magnificent, isn't she? Lord Draven's cultured voice made Senna spin around. He stood in the doorway, tall and elegant in a lab coat that somehow made him more terrifying than any armor. Perfect. The perfect synthesis of ancient blood and modern science. With her genetics, I'll create an army of evolved wolves. "You're insane," Senna snarled, moving to block his path to her mother. "Am I? Look at the territories fractured, weak, clinging to outdated hierarchies. The humans grow stronger while we tear ourselves apart over rank and tradition. We need evolution, and your bloodline is the key." His eyes gleamed with fanatic fervor. "Join me, princess. With your pure genes and my scientific knowledge, we could reshape the world." "The world doesn't need reshaping by madmen who torture innocents," Draven sighed. "Such narrow thinking. No wonder the Omegas have been oppressed for so long, even with power. You lack vision." He moved faster than she expected, his own experimental enhancements making him blur with speed. But Senna's training with Cassius had prepared her for this. She met his attack head-on, their clash sending medical equipment flying. The battle raged through the medical wing as Senna and Draven traded blows that shattered walls and sent sparks flying from damaged equipment. He was stronger, more experienced, but she had something he didn't: righteous fury, and the desperate need to protect her mother. "You fight well for someone raised as a servant," Draven panted, wiping blood from his split lip. "Imagine what you could have been with proper training from birth." "I am what I choose to be," Senna replied, circling him warily. "Not what others try to make me." Their dance of violence resumed, but this time Senna heard something that made her blood freeze. An alarm indicating the facility's self-destruct sequence had been activated. Draven smiled coldly at her expression. "If I can't have my research, no one can. 5 minutes until this entire place becomes a crater. Save your mother or stop me, you can't do both." He was right. Her mother's medical pod required careful disconnection to avoid killing her. The other Omegas throughout the facility needed evacuation, and Draven would escape in the chaos unless someone pursued him. That's when Cassius burst through the destroyed doorway, taking in the situation with a tactical glance. "Get your mother and the others out," he commanded. "I'll handle Draven." "No." The word tore from Senna's throat. Something deep in her wolf recognized the danger. If Cassius faced Draven alone, one of them wouldn't survive. "We do this together or not at all." The facility. The facility unpanament from Asarded, the facility from Acificated and Terrius 4, can burn. She made her choice, moving to stand beside him, but not with innocence inside. "You evacuate them. You're the king, they'll follow you without question. I'll keep Draven here." "Senna, no." 3 minutes? She interrupted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Get my mother, get the others, get out. I'll buy you time." She saw the war in his eyes, Duty against something personal she wasn't ready to name. But he was a king first, and hundreds of lives hung in the balance. 2 minutes, he said finally, his voice rough. Then I'm coming back for you. He moved with that inhuman speed toward her mother's pod, and Senna turned to face Draven with deadly resolve. The Lord laughed, genuinely amused. Quote, "You'd sacrifice yourself for wolves who spent years grinding you beneath their heels? How tragically noble." "The difference between us," Senna said, calling on every fighting technique Cassius had taught her, "is that I know the value of sacrifice. You only know the price of ambition." Their final clash was brutal. Draven held nothing back, using every enhancement and dirty trick in his arsenal. Senna felt ribs crack, tasted blood, but kept fighting. Not to win, she knew she was outmatched, but to delay, to give Cassius time to save everyone. 1 minute left. She could hear evacuation alarms, running feet, Cassius's commanding voice organizing the exodus. Her wolf sang with the rightness of it, even as Draven's claws found her throat. "Foolish child," he hissed. "You could have been a goddess." "I'd rather die a hero," she gasped out. The ceiling began to collapse as the first explosions rocked the facility. Draven released her, his survival instinct finally overriding his arrogance. But as he turned to flee, Senna used the last of her strength to grab his ankle, sending them both tumbling as burning debris rained down. "If I burn, you burn with me," she growled. That's when she felt it, arms like steel bands wrapping around her, lifting her away from Draven's grasping claws. Cassius had returned, as promised, his royal guards creating a protective barrier as he carried her through the collapsing facility. "I told you 2 minutes," he said against her ear, his voice a mixture of fury and relief. "Couldn't let you have all the heroic moments," she managed, clinging to consciousness by sheer will. They burst from the facility, just as it erupted in a massive fireball. The shockwave sent them tumbling, but Cassius shielded her with his body, taking the brunt of the impact. Senna woke to the scent of healing herbs and sunrise. The soft beeping of medical equipment told her she was safe, but it was the warm hand holding hers that made her truly believe it. "About time," Cassius murmured. His voice was hoarse with exhaustion, but the relief in it made her chest tight. "You've been unconscious for 4 days. Your mother's been beside herself." "My mother?" Senna's eyes snapped fully open. "She's alive, awake, and currently terrorizing my medical staff with demands to see you." His smile was fond but strained. "She's formidable. I see where you get it." Senna tried to sit up, gasping as her body protested. Everything hurt, but it was the good pain of healing rather than damage. The others? The Omegas? All evacuated safely. Draven didn't survive the explosion. We found enough remains to confirm it. His network is being dismantled as we speak. Cassius squeezed her hand gently. "You saved hundreds of lives, Senna. The Omegas are calling you their liberator." "I had help." She studied his face, noting new lines of strain. "You came back for me. Did you doubt I would?" His gold eyes held an intensity that made her breath catch. "Senna, when I thought I might lose you in that facility," he stopped, seeming to wrestle with words. "I've been king for 5 years. In that time, I've made alliances, treaties, political arrangements, but I've never—" He took a breath. "I've never felt what I feel when I look at you." Her heart thundered. "Cassius, I know the timing is impossible. You've just discovered your heritage, survived an ordeal that would break most wolves. The last thing you need is complications." He started to pull his hand away, but she held tight. "What if I want complications?" she asked softly. "What if I've spent my whole life accepting what others decided for me, and now I want to choose something for myself. And what would you choose? You, she said simply. I choose you. Not because you're the Alpha King, not for political advantage, but because you saw me when everyone else looked through me. You fought for me when no one else would. You came back for me. His control finally cracked. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers in a gesture achingly tender. I would always come back for you, he whispered. Always. The kiss that followed was gentle, mindful of her injuries but full of promise. When they parted, Senna felt something click into place, not the forced bond she'd witnessed between others, but something deeper and truer. When you're healed, Cassius said, his voice rough with emotion, I have a proposition for you. Oh? The territories need unification. The Omegas need a voice in government. The old system that allowed atrocities like Draven's experiments needs to be completely rebuilt. He met her eyes steadily. I can't do it alone. I need someone who understands both sides, someone who's lived as the lowest and proven worthy of the highest. Are you asking me to rule beside me, not as a consort or figurehead, but as an equal? The Luna Queen, the territories need. He smiled wryly. Your bloodline actually makes your claims stronger than mine in several regions. Together, we could heal what's been broken for generations. Power. Before Senna could respond, the door burst open. A woman who looked like an older, battle-hardened version of herself strode in. Luna Valewood's silver-streaked hair was wild, her eyes blazing with maternal fury. 4 days, she announced without preamble. 4 days I've been kept from my daughter by overcautious healers who seem to think I'm made of glass. Her gaze locked on Senna, and her fierce expression crumbled. My brave, foolish girl, what have they done to you? Mother. Senna's voice broke on the word she'd thought she'd never say again. You're really here. Luna crossed the room in 2 strides, gathering Senna into an embrace that spoke of 10 years of separation and sorrow. I'm here, little moon. I'm here, and I'm never leaving you again. The coronation took place under the full moon, 6 months after the facility's destruction. The great courtyard of the United Territories overflowed with wolves from every pack, every rank, all gathered to witness history. Senna stood before the ancient stone altar, wearing robes that blended the traditions of all 5 territories, a symbol of the unity they were building. Her mother stood to her left as her chief advisor, fully recovered and more formidable than ever. To her right, Cassius waited in matching robes, his presence a steady anchor in the sea of change. We gather tonight, High Priestess Morena intoned, to crown not 1 ruler, but 2. For the first time in 3 centuries, the territories will be led by equal partners, Alpha and Luna, King and Queen, strength and wisdom united. The crowd stirred with anticipation. The past months had seen dramatic changes. Omegas granted full citizenship rights, corrupt alphas removed from power. The rigid hierarchy that had enabled oppression slowly dismantled. Not everyone was happy with the changes, but the majority had embraced this new vision of the future. Senna Valewood, the priestess continued, you who were cast down have risen. You who were rejected have been chosen. Do you accept the responsibility of leadership? To serve all wolves regardless of rank or origin. I do, Senna replied, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard. Cassius Nightborn, you who sought justice have found wisdom. You who ruled alone now choose partnership. Do you accept this shared crown, this equal rule? I do, Cassius said, his eyes never leaving Senna's face. Persen. Then let all who witness know the truth. Morena raised an ancient scroll. The bloodline of Senna Valewood has been verified beyond doubt. She carries the direct lineage of Luna Prima, the first queen who united the packs in the Age of Legends. Her claim is not granted, but recognized she was always meant to rule. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This final revelation had been kept secret until now, but Senna had insisted on full transparency. No more hidden truths or manipulated bloodlines. Furthermore, Morena continued, the joining of these bloodlines, Nightborn and Prima, fulfills the ancient prophecy of reunification. When Alpha and Luna rule as one, the territories shall know peace. The twin crowns were brought forward, his of dark iron and moonstone, hers of silver and starlight. As they were placed on their heads, Senna felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. But unlike the burden she'd carried as an Omega, this weight felt right. Rise, Morena commanded, and greet your rulers. Long may they reign in wisdom and justice. The cheer that erupted shook the very stones of the palace. Long live the king, long live the queen. As the celebration began, Senna found a moment of quiet with Cassius on the same balcony where he'd once stood alone. Below them, wolves of every rank mingled freely, a sight that would have been impossible just a year ago. Any regrets? He asked, wrapping an arm around her waist. Only one, she admitted. I wish Elder Thaddeus could see this. He always believed I was meant for something more. He knew, Cassius said gently. Somehow I think he always knew. Why else would he have protected you so fiercely? They stood in comfortable silence, watching their people celebrate. Tomorrow would bring challenges. There were still those who resented the changes, still problems to solve, and wounds to heal. But tonight was for joy. Senna, Cassius, turned her to face him. That night in the facility, when you chose to stay and fight Draven, I realized something. What? That I'd been alone my whole life without knowing it. Being king, being alpha, it was duty, not choice. But being with you? He cupped her face gently. That's the first thing I've ever chosen purely for myself. And I chose you, she reminded him. No politics, no prophecies, no obligations. Just us. Just us, he agreed, and kissed her under the stars that had witnessed her transformation from broken Omega to Luna Queen. As the night deepened and the celebrations continued, Senna thought about the journey that had brought her here. From that terrible trial where no one had defended her, to this moment where she stood as defender of all who had no voice. The Alpha King had risen to protect her when she needed it most, and now they would rise together to protect everyone else. The Omega who had knelt in chains now wore a crown. The servant who had scrubbed floors now signed laws. The rejected wolf now stood, claimed and cherished by the most powerful alpha in the territories. But more than any of that, Senna Valewood, Luna Queen Senna Nightborn, had found her true self. Not in the bloodline she'd never known, not in the power she'd never imagined, but in the choice to fight for others as someone had once fought for her. And that, more than any crown or title, was her greatest victory.